I just want to share with everybody. I'm excited to see where this conversation goes. As you know, every conversation is just mind blowing to me. I have the best job in the world, but I'm very curious where this is going to go because I have an author who has written a book, and I'm going to tell you straight up right now, I got chills. I got chills. And I think you are all going to want to get this book. It's a really lovely perspective on COVID-19 and the pandemic and the lockdown and all of that. And it's called, before I introduce the author, COVID-19 and Humanity's Spiritual Awakening. Everybody hear that? Humanity's Spiritual Awakening. Yeah. So I want to welcome Forrest Rivers. Thanks so much, Forrest, for joining me.
Hey, thank you so much, Susan, for having me today.
And the reason why I'm getting chills is because in perusing your book, you've peppered in so much ancient wisdom and, to me, spiritual truth in it as guideposts. And I love that because I have felt from the beginning when the lockdown happened, I knew that this was a huge wake-up call for humanity. Huge. Now, having gone through it, what's your take on it? Do you think people have woken up yet?
So I think that people have woken up in various ways. And here's some of the ways I see people waking up a little bit.
Okay.
One way, I think people are going to be no longer satisfied with living a life that doesn't bring them some semblance of meaning and some sense of deeper connection. I was talking with a friend today on the phone, and he was lamenting his return back to the office. And he said, all I really want to do is I want to figure out some way to serve people. I don't really want to be wasting my days away in an office anymore. Yeah. I don't really know how long I'm going to last in this job, he said. I think you're going to see that happening, or you're already seeing that happening. People are re-questioning as we return to a new normal, whatever that even really means.
Yeah, people never going to happen. Never going to happen.
Never going to happen. People are going to be questioning, is this what I really want to be doing? I think there was more people who were existentially questioning their own lives than maybe at any point we've had in recent memory. So yes. That's one lasting effect I think we're going to see from this. And I also think, I could be wrong here, Susan, but I think we've had death has been so much in our face over the last year, whether it's, the fear of dying or literally knowing someone who's died from this, or, it could be the metaphorical loss of our jobs, the death of our jobs, or the death of our identities we've been attached to. I think with all of that death, people how do I want to say this? People are more interested in living a life that's a little bit more detached and a little bit more centered in wanting to foster authentic connection. There you go.
Okay, so let's talk about this detachment thing for us, because sure. I want you to explain to everybody what that actually is, because to some people, being detached can mean that you've closed your heart off, that you're you don't care, right? So what does it mean to you, detachment?
So the way that I understand detachment is being less concerned with our ego identities, being less concerned with the way that others perceive us, being less concerned with having made it with our wealth and our material gains, being less concerned with our day-to-day ego concerns, and being more concerned with living an authentic and happy life, living for things that actually matter, living for things that actually matter. And I think this last year has definitely given us a sense, well, do I really want to be working that 40-hour-a-week job? Do I really want to not be living a life of service? Do I want to live maybe a little bit more connected to nature? So when I say detachment, I mean detaching from what is illusionary or unreal in our lives and living with a little bit more spontaneity, living with a little bit more opening ourselves to the natural flow of creation, rather than living this very, like, Susan, very the structured life that's been laid to us by the powers that be.
Right.
And allowing us to more creatively flow. I guess the Tao Te Ching has a great term for it, Wu Wei, living, letting what comes naturally come naturally to you, rather than just try to force ourselves upon life.
And I know to many people that sounds counterintuitive, right? And yet it is the intuitive. It's the actual intuitive flow of life.
Yeah. And I think when you become detached from the conditioned type of life that's been given to us, money, we have to pursue money, power, fame, identity, all of these things.
Fast car, fast women.
Car, fast car, fast woman, all of these things. I think what that does is it allows you to live a little bit more presently in this moment now.
Yeah.
And actually what that does is when you're living more in flow with life, your heart actually opens more. So the more detached you become more open. And so becoming detached doesn't mean you're going to become this like nihilistic, cold-hearted person. The way I'm using detachment is kind of how the Buddha talked about it, like detaching from the illusion and connecting to what's real, which is the natural flow of life. If you want connecting to the interconnectedness that underlies everything.
Of all things.
Which
of all things.
A simpler way to say that would be, when you do that, you connect to love. And I don't mean just, interpersonal, I love you, you love me. I mean more, you fall in love with the universe, everything. You recognize the miracle that is consciousness.
Yes. And the pathway to that, and you talk about it in your book, it is to, well, and this is what I talk about a lot, is to learn to love yourself. And by learning to really love yourself, that opens your space, your heart space, that opens your consciousness to see that everything, like you just said, Forrest, is love. Everything is that energy, a higher vibratory energy that we can only say is a higher love. There was a song about that. Somebody wrote a song about higher love,
Yeah.
Yeah. So
take me to a higher love. Yeah.
That's right. So let's talk about, in your book I want to talk about the seeming pairs of opposites, and where does that come from? And why is that important? Because I think that the Western mind, right? We were taught a certain way. It's very linear. It's hard to understand the whole
good over here, bad over here. It's very dualistic.
And never the twain shall meet.
They should never, in Western mindset, it's, suffering here, joy is here. You either suffer or you have joy. Right. You either
go to heaven or you burn in hell.
You go to heaven or you burn in hell. And all that does is just creates more suffering, in my mind, in where I'm coming from. And I think what COVID did is it kind of blew all of that to smithereens, right? It blew that entire paradigm of this dualistic mindset, totally blew it open, right?
Because let's hope so. I still got fingers crossed.
I have fingers crossed, because ironically, think about this for a second, right, Susan? It took a monumental event of suffering, right? I mean, think about this. Like, so in our dual society, before COVID, there was no way that we were ever going to link suffering and joy together, at least in our mainstream. But then suddenly you have this event that creates this mass suffering, whether it's, and I don't want to underplay the amount of suffering that's come out of this, right? People have died.
Loss of businesses. People are, there's this thing called long COVID where people are not recovering, from it. All of these unfortunate things that are happening. All of the anxiety that comes around the vaccines, right? All the anxiety, right? All of the anxiety. I got anxiety.
Anxiety, yep.
Yeah.
That's how I feel now. The anxiety about the lockdowns, the depression that people felt in isolation. But weirdly, right, Susan, out of all of that suffering, right, came the opportunities to delve deeper into our own self-reflection, into our own self. You talked about it beautifully a second ago, that learning to love ourselves. We're so busy in our fast-paced society. I've overstimulated.
Yes.
That suddenly we had this period to where we were reflecting. It was a great time to start gardening. It was a time to find a creative outlet, painting, art, music, writing. It was a time to reconnect with the earth, which I talk a lot about in the book, right? All of those things, right? Now, so weirdly, a lot of this suffering, a monumental suffering event, somehow opens up this pathway to experience joy, inner reflection, self-empowerment. Whoa, that's pretty far out there, right? But in our Western society, right, Susan, we were taught there's only suffering and there's only joy. They're not connected. How can you be finding joy and empowerment in the suffering? Because they're intertwined, right?
It's amazing. I'm sorry, Forrest.
No, please.
They are intertwined. And it's amazing you're talking about this, because I was just in meditation and journaling. That's my spiritual practice every morning. I was just writing about this whole thing about me, right? Self-inflicted stress, anxiety, fear, worry. And the only way out of it is to let go of it, right? Just to drop it, like a dog with a bone. You got to tell the dog to drop it sometimes. And
absolutely,
in the rush of humanity before the pandemic, nobody took time to even go, okay, how do I drop it? How do I just let go? How do I surrender into a more coherent way of life?
Just living more in flow with the natural course of things, living with a bit more of a mindful spirit and a conscious heart. And actually, I'm sorry, an open heart, an open heart and a still mind or a mindful mind or a conscious mind and an open heart, and that's something that this revealed for us. And, to the East, even the many Native American religions, the fact that joy or self-empowerment or self-reflection could come out of suffering would be no surprise to them. They'd say, well, of course. It takes those, it's the same thing. The only reason we appreciate summer is because we have winter.
Right.
The only reason we appreciate night is because we've had the day of labor in the sun. They're all, it all folds upon, all seeming opposites fold upon each other in the end. And that became very apparent to people, I think, with COVID. Mm-hmm. What is good? What is bad? Was this event really bad? Can we call anything bad or good, at least in the perspective of when we talk about COVID?
Yeah. And in your book, you say that the seeming polarities give birth to each other. Just like you said, night gives birth to day, and
summer gives birth to winter. Look at the cycle of the seasons, and the moon and the sun equally share in their power, and they naturally give way and let go, like you said, to give way for the other.
Yeah.
And, I think this was like a lesson, like the COVID was a lesson, has been a lesson in that,
I, you know,
that there are.
I agree with you. It is a lesson. I'm sorry, I interrupted.
Oh no, you didn't interrupt at all. And to say nothing of the fact that it also uh, blew open our society's fear of openly talking about death. I mean, that to me was actually one of the more remarkable things that came out of COVID too, was suddenly, we like to pretend that two things. We like to pretend that we are just this body and that's it. And once the body goes, we either go to either a final resting space and there's nothing else that really comes after that, or we just are meat and that's the end. Well,
Right.
suddenly people were forced to consider the possibility, well, who am I really? What does it mean to actually die? Who dies? There was a great book written years back by Stephen Levine, the great
Yeah.
teacher. I love Stephen Levine. And he said he wrote a book called Who Dies? Like, who dies? And people were reflecting on it. What do I want to do? I heard more people I spoke to over the last year have come to me and say, well, I think, reincarnation might be real. There might be another kernel to life than just my body. There might be something more to it. It might be, as the Hindus say, that when we die, we're dropping the body. Something's dropping the body. Or, what does it mean to actually, is death really this finality, or is it a transition into something else? Those were questions that people were having to actually ask themselves for the first time. And that's very uncomfortable. But there was a lot of that, I think, happening over the last year. And what does that do when you start questioning death? You realize, I better get over my fear of it, or I'm not going to be able to live my life fully.
Right. And to begin to live your life fully.
I would argue that
you don't have, yes. And I'm a big proponent about reincarnation because been there, done that. I know, but there's still this right current time frame that's a blip in the big whole cosmic thing. And it's important to live it now instead of, well, when I get there, when I get enough money, or when I get married, when I have kids, when I retire. There's always, the Western culture at least puts off the living process.
And we are never, and in the words of the most biggest influence to me personally, Ram Dass, right? Yes. In the words of him, we can never be here now. We're never present if we're constantly saying, well, I'll wait till I'm 65 to retire. Or I'll wait till I'll do this then. That there'll be then. Well, this life is a precious opportunity. Every incarnation we have is a precious opportunity, and we better make the most of it. We better make the most of it. And I think that this event was kind of a wake-up call for everybody to say, wait a minute, I can't really take those cars, and I can't really take my retirement, and I can't take my second and third house and all that money with me into the beyond.
Right.
This is what I have now, and I better live this fully with an open heart now.
So where I live in Ventura, California, and we are up on a hill, and we can hear the freeway, right? The 101. And when everything shut down and people stopped going to work, it got so quiet. It was beautiful. It was fabulous. And I could hear the birds singing in my backyard. And it was like amazing. And then as people just recently in the last couple of months are starting to commute again, or even just go away for a weekend, that you can hear the noise. And I did not realize how much I had settled for having that constant motorized hum in the background of my mind, and what I'm noticing is getting on the freeways in California now, people are driving like they used to. I'm like, wait, do we really have to be that aggressive now? Do you really have to just barely slice that guy's fender as you're trying to get to your exit? Can you not be mindful? What happened? They just, everybody, well, not everybody, but I was noticing, because we were traveling this last week, that some people were not. They just went back to old habit, and which is a human condition, right? You have to constantly flex and grow and consciously change so you don't fall into those old habits. So it's been interesting to see.
It is so much. Yeah, that's going to be the biggest challenge, right? Is how do we? Oh gosh, you said so much. Oh, man, so much you just said there, Susan, to unpack. Like it is a day by day job where we have to hold ourselves accountable for our own growth. Mm-hmm. And if we don't do that, if we don't remember the lessons that we've learned from this last year, we're going to fall right back into the same trap of getting caught in our illusions.
Exactly.
Certainly everything you just said with the people's driving habits is in that I have to get here now. I have to be, that's
and I get caught up in
symptom.
That. Yeah.
I do too.
I do. I
do all the time.
Forrest, I want, in your book, COVID-19 and Humanity's Spiritual Awakening, this speaks to the seeming opposites. You did a really good job about saying, one in America, in the United States, there's this one ideology that was happening about, conspiracy theories and the science isn't true, or the science is true, this whole thing of seeming opposites. And yet, so I lived the last year and a half trying to reconcile within my mind, where's the middle? Where is the truth when these opposites are doing the bright and shiny thing and distracting everybody? Where is the truth? And what I found is I had to go to my inner truth.
Beautiful.
And listen to my inner truth. And my inner truth, I find out, is slightly different from my husband's inner truth. Whereas,
that's the secret right there. Is
What's the
there's
secret?
So much noise. The secret is to look within yourself for the truth. And the fact that you've figured that out right away, that's a value to your listeners and viewers right there. Is consult your inner truth. We were fed so much external illusion and external noise, whether it was coming from the right or the left or conservatives or liberals or the perspective,
some of the people that are just kind of crazy,
or the people who are just extremists on all sides. We had what you just said is incredibly valuable. When we were given this onslaught of extremist rhetoric and ideology, all we ever have to do, I hope we learn this from COVID, all we ever have to do is turn within ourselves, quiet our minds, still mind, open heart. That's why I can't emphasize this some more. I also hope something people got from this is that they learned to pray and meditate, because that is so important. You can't really turn within unless you can still your mind and become one pointed.
Yeah.
And unless you've cultivated that inner faith through prayer, and I don't mean you have to go to a church and pray. I mean like real prayer, like prayer deep within yourself, whatever that conception may be for you of that higher power, whatever it is. For some, it's Jesus. For others, it's Muhammad. For others, it's the earth. For others, it's Buddha. Whatever that may be.
Redwood tree.
It could be a giant redwood tree. It could be the beautiful blue mountains outside my house. It doesn't matter, whatever that is. But we need to, what our society doesn't do enough of is it doesn't encourage us to find our own inner truth.
Yeah.
It doesn't teach us to seek that which we already know that's within us. And, and it's always there. That small, still voice is always within us. We just have to calm ourselves down and not get so caught up in all the extreme rhetoric and beliefs that are being shoved down our throats. And I hope that this period has taught us to look more within for the truth instead of listening to all that noise, that ecstatic noise that only pulls us further and further from our true sense, our true refuge within ourselves.
Yes. So okay, Forrest, because now we're coming out of this pandemic, and how would you encourage people to maintain that inner truth as you're going out and getting on the freeway or going to work, or how do you maintain that?
So one significant thing is to establish a meditation practice. You don't need to do more than, even when you're starting out, 5-6 minutes a day. Simply focusing on your breath is a great start. A mantra, repeating a phrase when you're finding yourself in a in a tense situation, or in a situation that's inducing fear or reaction. Whisper a mantra to yourself. The inner truth is within me, God is within me, or simply, I am here.
Right.
Something as simple as, I am here. Oh, I am here. A reminder that you're not just this robotic thing that reacts time and time again.
Yeah.
There is something deep I in here that's connected to the greater I,
Yeah.
I am here. I am present. That helps a lot. And another thing that I think has plagued our society a lot that could really help us maintain our awareness or our mindfulness is making a concerted effort every day to connect with the earth in some way. Connecting with nature has such a profound way of making us more present, making us more centered, making us more mindful, and it's healthy for us mentally. That could be, for me, my outlet. Every day I spend countless hours hiking in the woods, gardening. You don't have to live in the mountains. You don't have to live in the forest. You can bring nature into you. You can have you can set up a garden on your back porch. You can, you can set up a bird feeder and, engage with the birds. You can
buy house plants. I just did that and I brought in like 5 or 6 new plants just in my office, let alone my house, because I realized I wasn't getting out in nature enough. And so I need some friendly vibes here to keep me alive and awake and connected.
Alive and connected. That's beautiful, bringing in houseplants. So I think connecting with nature has such a grounding effect. And I hope, like what you just said, Susan, before, when everything went into lockdown and all the streets got quiet, whoa, far out, you could go outside and actually hear the birds chirping. In India, they could see my favorite story. You could see that they in places where they could once see the mountains, the Himalayas, they could actually see them again. That
was amazing. That's amazing.
Amazing.
And we got to see, for all those people that were saying there is no environmental crisis,
get out of here.
All you had to do was get off in California, get off the 405, and oh my God, there's no more smog. How did that happen?
Wow. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm kind of curious. So Forrest, I want to talk, you have a chapter about choosing faith, not belief. And would you share with everybody what's the difference? Because I kind of think that I did until I read your explanation. I was like, oh, well, that makes sense.
So faith is not something that can be conditioned within you. Faith is something that you arrive at through direct knowing, through your own direct experience, that as the way things are in any given moment. And faith is like an inner reservoir of your inherent connection to the one, to God, to the Tao, to the greater consciousness, to the greater web of being. Faith is something that is within us from birth. Yeah. It's our inner refuge. It's not something that can be tampered with. It's an inner awareness, and it's always there. All you have to do is take the time to tune into it. Meditation, prayer, nature, things we talked about, journaling. You mentioned something before the interview, Susan. Wow. If everybody took a moment to journal every day, yeah, and reflect where they're at, they would access that point of their inner faith, because they're tapping, when you're reflecting, you're contemplating, you're tapping into that inner reservoir of faith. So faith is a direct knowing or direct experience, at least from where I'm standing, right? The belief is something that's more external. Belief is not something that has any kind of eternal direct knowing. A belief is kind of a superficial hunch, or it's an external message that's being processed within to you. So belief comes from without. I'm sorry. Belief is an external thing.
Right.
Faith
that's
is
put
an inner
on
thing.
you.
That's put on you. And I think on the spiritual path, at least the mystics of every faith, they encourage you to give up belief and to seek your own, to seek inner faith through your own direct experience. And they don't tell you what that faith should look like. That's up to you to figure out, which of course creates, all of the, confusion about what the mystics are telling you, because people will go to them and go, well, tell me what that inner faith is supposed to be. Well, no. That's, you tell me, right, by telling yourself. Like that's, right. You can only find that out.
And I think that is because everybody's a unique emanation of source. They are their own divine spark. And so my faith, my understanding and comprehension of faith for me, it could be different from what even though we can have a conversation along similar philosophical lines and think we comprehend each other. But my faith is probably very different from your faith, and yet it could feel the same. Does that make sense? So it could feel similar, but we all are so just one little degree different, and that's why there's a plethora of us.
Well, I liken it. Yeah, I liken it to like if you have two people who are established in their own inner faith, which is going to be a different expression, a slightly different variation of the same, I love what you said, the same divine spark or spark of God that's within everybody. It would be akin to you. Let's say we're both established our inner faith. It would be like both of us are climbing a mountain, but you're on one side of the mountain, taking what you see as your path up, and I'm on the other side of the mountain taking my path up. And right now I'm climbing up my trail saying, this is the only trail up to the top. And you're taking yours up and saying, that's the only trail to the top. But then we both get to the peak. We see each other there. We're like, far out. Where was your trail? And I'm like, well, where was your trail? But we both got there because we were both resting in that inner faith, but the inner faith had slightly different direction, slightly different expressions, right, the different paths, but they lead to the same place.
The many paths that lead to the same place. Yes.
Many paths lead to one.
Right. Yeah. And that I really believe is true. I believe it 100%. And that has been my experience too. So, Forrest, how can people get your book? And do you have a website and things like that?
Sure, sure. So you can get the book on Amazon, and you can get it off of Barnes and Noble, both online, Kindle edition and print edition.
Okay.
You can also grab it off of my independent publisher if you don't like Amazon or Barnes and Noble, and that's through Conscious Living Media. But I have a special thing. If you go onto Amazon and you buy the book and you leave a review, I will send you a free copy of my first book, The Hippie Revival. So,
cool.
Yeah, it's kind of it's a good,
buy one, get one.
It'll be fun, right? And buy one, get one. And there's just all you gotta do is just leave a review. And you can reach me by email at forrestrivers4@gmail.com.
The number 4?
Number 4. Yep. So forrestrivers4@gmail.com. Or you can reach me on Facebook. Just friend request me at Forrest Rivers. You can just type in Forrest Rivers. It'll pop right up. And just leave me an address that you read the book, you have a review, and I'll send you a copy of the Hippie Revival too. So you can also find on my website on forrestrivers.com. I also keep I have like a daily blog I keep too. And it's just like inspiring words for the day. So feel free to check all that out too.
I love all that. I love all that. Forrest Rivers, the book is called COVID-19 and Humanity's Spiritual Awakening. And I want you guys to know this is a very well thought out book. Forrest lays it all out with some very sage advice from all the different Eastern philosophies that I really feel are paramount now to focus on. So Forrest, thanks again for joining me. I greatly appreciate it. And pleasure. I appreciate this beautiful gift to humanity's awakening.
Thank you so much. And what a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much. I really am grateful for being here today.
You are so welcome. It's my honor. And I'm just going to end with, and so it is, namaste.
So it is. Namaste.